Brandon Brands.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This week, we're talking about how to build a master plan for your content. Check it out.
In a world where advertising is ignored, business is exposed, and the only constant is change, how do you build a brand that matters? Welcome to Brands on Brands on Brands, a home for those who think different and push their boundaries. This is where branding that matters lives. Now, here's your host, Brandon Birkmeyer.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Brands on Brands on Brands. I'm Brandon Birkmeyer, your personal marketing coach, and I believe that building a brand that matters is the only way for a business to thrive tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in each week as we bring you thought leaders in marketing and branding, explaining to you and breaking it down, the tips, the tactics, the things that got them there, the best ways to build your business and your brand. And we also each week come to you with the solo show. This is one of those weeks. And this season, I've been focusing on content marketing. So today's episode is exciting. I want to talk to you about how to build a master plan for your content so that it's not random, so that it drives results for your business and gets you what you want. So let's jump into that. Can't wait to get going. Let's get started.
Brandon Brands.
What is a master plan for your content? What does that mean? Well, let me break it down for you. When you are creating content consistently, when you're out there creating podcasts and blogs and video for YouTube, you are hopefully delivering on a consistent basis. And when you create maybe once a week or twice a week, coming up with content can be daunting. One of the most common questions asked in this space is, how do you create content consistently? How do you come up with content ideas? And one of the issues with that is in trying to come up with ideas, with trying to fill that content bucket with ideas every week, you end up becoming a little bit random. And what I've been trying to push to people is that you need to be designing your content, designing the flow of it. And one of the ways to do that is through building a master plan. Now, what is a master plan? A master plan for your content is your direction. It's the direction you take your content over time with purpose. And there's a few ingredients in creating that I'm going to talk to you guys about today. And the first, second, and third, I'll go through them quickly. The first is connective tissue. You need to have something that ties your content together. The second is you need to have a content map. You need to know where it's going and where it's leading, episode to episode, show to show, piece to piece. And then you need to have a binge trigger, and we'll talk about that as well. So let's go into connective tissue first. Connective tissue is a word I picked up, I don't know where, when I was working on the branding for Coca-Cola. They talked often about this idea of connective tissue in their creative, something that when you see one image or a commercial or a billboard or a radio ad or something on Facebook, what is that common thread that's going to connect all those different pieces of creative? And I like to think about that the same way with your content. What is that common thread that's going to connect one piece of content to the next, to the next, to the next, so that they are all organized and make sense as one body of work? They don't necessarily need to flow sequentially together, but they do need to be connected. And that connective tissue is you thinking about, yes, back to the beginning, like what is the mission for the show that you've created? And what is the goal of that particular episode in particular? And as you start thinking about those things, it'll help you realize that there is something that is part of your message that is consistent. So an example of this, a show that I like to listen to, a podcast that I like to listen to, is the Gary Vee show. And Gary Vee often talks about this, a few different ideas. He's a few different connective threads in his content. Some of them are about attention. Attention is the name of the game. You have to chase attention. You have to, all of media and marketing and everything else is just about attention. And he likes to say that he barters attention, or he trades attention. He sits there and figures out where's attention going to be and where can he get it next. I think he says he's a day trader of attention. And that filters through whenever he's giving a talk on what media is working, what's not. He will answer a question like, well, what do you think of this new thing that came out? He'll say, well, I think it's great. I'm going to go where it is. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to see how to make it work. And then when I figure out how to make it work, I'm going to push all into it. But I'm not romantic about the things that used to work or the new things that come up. I'm not excited about them. I just use what ends up working the best, because he's shifting and changing into where things are going. So my point is, that's one of his messages, that every time he talks about attention, when he's asked a marketing question, he talks about attention. Another one is hustle. He likes to talk about getting out there, hustling, and figuring out how to do more than you were doing before. And he brings that out in different ways and different formats. But when he is asked, like, how do you produce so much, or how does someone like me get out there and do what you've done? His answer is built around this idea that you can always find more hours in the day where you can be shifting from doing things that are wasting your time to doing things that are productive. So there's always these answers. So that's one example of a connective thread or connective tissue. For another great creator, his name's Russell Brunson. He is the inventor of ClickFunnels. He is prolific in terms of creating content and marketing. And if you listen to his show, it's a podcast called Marketing Secrets. What he says in the beginning of his show is, how does the person who doesn't spend billions on marketing, that didn't get funded, didn't get given money by venture capital, that is doing it for themselves, how do people like us create businesses that work? And he goes through it and describes throughout the whole show. He talks about these marketing secrets, which are, how does the average person get out there and build a business, build a brand without the advantages of money being thrown at you? And it's all tied together like that. And his whole business is built around this idea of a tribe and hacking their way through, like, figuring out the secrets of marketing and better ways to do things. And that ties all of his content together. So whether he's talking about one topic one day and a different topic the next, it's still under the same kind of theme. So I think you guys are starting to get it. But the idea is, what is your connective tissue? And when you start to think about why did you get started and what is your message, and you start using your voice and figuring out, I keep talking about these same things, you'll start to find your message. And if you can articulate that and find a way to save that and share it, then you'll have that and you'll start to connect it into these things. So for me, a lot of my articulation of the thing that connects my episode to episode is about building brands that matter. And I say that in my episode content, but it comes back to this idea that it doesn't matter. It doesn't just have to be in marketing and in branding. For me, if you're just a human out there and you're working in corporate, I want you to matter. I want you to build a personal brand so that you're not replaceable as a commodity in your business. Or if you're already a personal brand and you're creating content, I want you to build content that matters so that you aren't just another voice in the crowd, that you are actually reaching out, connecting with the right people and making something that people hear and that resonates. So there's this idea of never settling for just being another face in the crowd, of mattering. And so I phrase this as building brands that matter, but it's around this idea of never settling. So that's mine. That's my message. That's my connective tissue. And then I start there and then I break it down. So this season, the connective tissue is about content marketing. It's all connected under this idea of content marketing. Well, how did I come to that? Well, I had done a whole season about personal branding. And I wanted to dive deeper on how to make content and how to repurpose content and how to do it better, quicker, faster, stronger. And as I used the tools out there in marketing to figure out, like, how do I phrase that? What are the words people are using? At first, I thought it was going to be around this idea of repurposing or, reusing content or content multipliers or that kind of stuff. But really the words that people use when they're looking for this is content marketing. And I had, there's tools out there like semrush.com. It has keyword tools. Wordtracker.com has keyword tools. Ubersuggest has some, .com has some things you can play with. And as you type in, you can start to see, well, what do people actually say? What do they actually search for that is something that you want to be competitive with? And as you find those, you can kind of hone what are the actual words that you build your message around for that season. And I'd advise you do that so that you can, as you start to design your show for a longer period of time, you can say, well, what's the bigger theme for that season? And is it something that is big enough or more, interesting enough that people are searching for it all the time so that you can actually be playing in a space that is relevant and is a place where people are actually looking for help. So those are some tools I use for that. And I'll put the links for that in the show notes. But that's the first step, is this connective tissue. The second is this idea of a content map. And I like to think of it as an attention funnel, if you will. So the content map is basically saying, as you build show by show, where are the shows going? Are they leading somewhere? And for some of you, you can look back at the shows you've already created and say, well, what was the topic that this was generally about? And I've done that. And I look back at my shows, and I have a lot of shows that were, and especially at the beginning, about entrepreneurship, how entrepreneurs can be doing a better job at building brands and some tips for that. And then I had a lot of shows leaning into the idea of personal branding, like we talked about, and how to find your voice and how to build your brand for your solo business. And I have a lot of shows that are straight marketing tactics, very marketing specific, channel specific advice. And as you start to bundle your shows or put them into groups, even as you're looking backwards, you can start to see, okay, these kind of all go together. And if I had to say that, if they had just listened to this show, where's the next show? Where's the next place they should go after that? What's the next thing they should listen to after that? You can start to design that. And the best thing to do is to be able to say, okay, if you just listen to here, let me serve you up. Let me show you the next thing you should be listening. That's going to be the most useful thing for you. And if you're just randomly creating every week, that's not happening for you. If you are creating random content week to week, then you're not going to know where to send the person to have them listen to the next thing they're looking for. And for a lot of people, they just wait for the next episode of the season. So I know podcasting is sequential, but why make them wait for your next piece of content? Why not send them backwards to find something that you've created already so that they can continue the journey that they're on? And maybe it's a podcast, or maybe it's a blog, or maybe it's a tool that you have, whatever it is. But if you map that out with your content and design where you should send them, then you can make sure to include the links and the calls to action that tell people where to go. If you don't help them find more of your content, then after they went through the trouble of listening to your first show, you've lost them. What I'd like you to do is, after doing all that work to acquire a listener, give them somewhere else to go so that they listen to more of your shows. Tell them the next best thing that they could be listening to. So for example, if you're listening to this show right now about how to build a master plan for your content, the most useful thing you can do is listen to the show prior to this, which was my full description of how to build your content marketing strategy. It defined what is content marketing strategy, how to do it for yourself, and why it's beneficial. And I designed it first purposely for the season because every show could lead back to that show in its own way. And if you've listened to that show, from there, you might want to listen to some personal branding shows that I've done. So there's steps to this. But at the end of the day, you have to design this. And the best part of it is when you start to design this attention funnel, when you start to draw this content map of where people should go, what's great is at the end of that, the X marks the spot on the map is your freebie, is your product or service. And if you lead them there, then the last thing that they may need in their journey is the thing that maybe they'll give you their email to get that thing that you need. And now you can build them into your system of having consistent content served to them. They are on a channel that you control, like your email. And when you start to provide offers or talk about your services in a more natural place, like in an email, and you let people know what's going on, they found you because you've led them there. So that's the big benefit of having a content map, is that you're leading them somewhere that allows them to, number one, consume more content and stay in your world. But then number two, you're taking them to a place that's getting them more and more useful content exactly on the journey they're on, and then leads them to somewhere that gives them a quick win of some sort that allows you to get their information and continue to serve them, or to offer them a product that might be exactly what they need right now because they've been following this path. And if they've followed the path, then they probably need the thing you've built for them. So that's the content map. And in terms of building it, I'd say start with your old episodes, look back, group them into buckets, and then start to say, okay, if I had listened to this, what's the next thing I would need to learn? And think of it as almost in reverse order. So start at the bottom. Like if I learned one tool on how to record a podcast using this kind of microphone, I would then say the next thing to look at is I showed you how to use this microphone, but now look back at my full list of all the 10 microphones, my review of the top 10 microphones in the market for different parts of the system. That's one way to do it. Or it's like, hey, I just taught you to use this microphone. Go to my next episode about all the equipment you should be using to get the best quality of sound for your show or something like that. And then each thing leads to the next. So it's like, okay, now you're on this full equipment list. The next thing from there on the map would be, okay, you've listened to my show about all the equipment you should use for your podcast. You're probably figuring out how to launch a show. Go from this to my full blog on how to start a podcast from top to bottom. And you can see how that leads in there. And then once you get them to that part, it's like, okay, now download this freebie on, validating your podcast ideas, or on, here's the how to spend 20 minutes with me so I can help you with get your last minute podcast questions answered, whatever it is. These are ways you could be working with people as examples that are relevant to my field. So, but you get to fit it for yours. So that's the content map. And the third step of this, which I don't want to forget, and I want you guys to pay attention to, is what I'm calling a binge trigger. Now, everyone's heard of bingeable content, or, binge watching TV or binging Netflix or whatever the thing is. And what's funny is as a podcaster, it is easy to binge backwards. You just, reverse listen to all the episodes in reverse order of what's going on in the season. But what I like to do is say, can we send people somewhere that they wouldn't naturally go on their own, that works in this same way that you've built the content map? How do you build a trigger for them to want to go down that road? How do you let them know that they need to keep listening? And, there are ways to call attention to them taking that next step. And, it's more than just creating a call to action. It is creating some kind of enticing reason that they should jump to the next thing and leading them down a path. And part of this binge trigger is saying, okay, let me identify you as the right person for this, and also disqualify you if you're the wrong person for this. So it's, hey, you just read my episode on this microphone. You're probably looking to increase the quality of your show. If that's you, go check out my equipment list that has everything you need to know. And that qualifies them, because if they're not building a new show, then they won't need to go to the next thing. But you have to sit there and say, what is it about the person listening to the show that is true? Like, what are they looking for? Why would they be listening other than it was just there? Why would they continue to listen to the entire show to get to the end? And having made it all the way through your content, what does that say about them? Well, it probably says that whatever that thing was you're talking about, they're pretty interested in. And so there's probably a next obvious thing that they could be listening to. So say that to them. Hey, you're probably this person. If you're listening to this episode about how to build a master plan for your content, you are probably creating content right now and always looking for better ways to create content. If you'd like to do that, then stick with me this season, because we're talking every episode this season about how to create better content, and how not only how to create better content, but how to get that content in front of more people. That's my binge trigger. That's my these are my people. This is who I'm speaking to. That's my call to action. So if you're that person, then here's what you can look forward to. And here's where you should go to listen to it. Go back to episode 121 to listen to the first place on this. And by the way, don't just listen to it. Go to the blog page, brandonbrands.com/121, because the notes there are something that you're going to want to download it in PDF form so that you can refer to them, because it's basically a laid out plan for you step by step that you can download. That's a binge trigger. You have to give them a reason to want to continue to listen and to get more, because there are more resources that you couldn't fit into the show that you've built. So that is one example. Another example is for the links that I gave today. We talked about semrush.com and wordtracker.com and ubersuggest.com. And maybe you'll go and search for those on the internet. But if you want to know how to use them, then maybe I can ask you to apply to my email list. And as I plan on creating my own overviews of those tools this year, you'll find out when those tools are available to be, what the reviews are for those or whatever it is. And I mean, that's one example, but basically it's like, hey, I've mentioned this thing. Do you want to know more about it? You can go check out this. So if you've teased something already, you can go check that out. I have definitely a few episodes later in the season where I will be calling out specific tools that I've already done deep dives on. And I'll definitely be calling out those deep dives as something for you to go listen to next. So that's what I'm talking about. How can you design your content in a way that keeps people listening for more? So that's what building a master plan is about. You start with the connective tissue. You start with the thing that ties all the episodes together so that your show isn't random. And even if it was random, then go backwards into time, group them together, go back into your blogs and give them a place to go next that makes sense in sequence, so that if you get the benefit of someone listening to an old show, they can find what they should be listening to next and help them with that. And if they're listening to a new show, do the same thing. And now you can, as you're producing going forward, be more aware of creating those for them. So now you can record them into the shows as well and not just type them in afterwards. So connective tissue. The second was building your content map, which helps people know, which helps you understand where you're sending people. Because if you're creating a lot of content, you need to have a good understanding of what leads to what, so that then when you are creating a binge trigger, which is part 3, you know what you need to create to send them to the thing that you think they should go to next that makes sense for them. So those are the 3 parts for me about having a master plan for your content. Is really about this idea of you designing something that makes sense, that helps people listen to more of your content. Because when you can find someone that feels like they had value, they were given value for that show, and then more and more value from 3, 4, 5 other shows, you've now really got someone's attention. On top of that, you are getting the benefit from the media channels. If Google sees that someone searched for something, found your show, found your blog, read it, and then kept reading and read 3, 4, 5 other blogs, that is telling Google that you are a super relevant site for this type of person. And they're going to try to bump you up in the search. For the podcast, if every time someone listens to you, they start binge listening to multiple episodes, that increases your numbers and shoots you up in the rank, which gets you more exposure. If you repurpose your show as a YouTube video, same thing happens. If those people are watching your video and then are told to go watch 2 or 3 or 4 other videos and they do that, you're sending a signal to Google that says, this is really interesting. And you're keeping people on YouTube's channel, and they're going to reward you by sending you more organic traffic that can continue to do the same thing, because they want to sell ads. They want people to stay on their channel, and it's mutually beneficial. So if you can build your content to do that, if you can create it with that in mind, it's going to help you. You're going to have a more loyal audience. You're going to be rewarded by the channels with a stronger following and stronger reach. And at the end of the day, you're probably helping your listeners and audience move quicker to their end goal, because they don't have to keep searching every time they have a new question. You're leading them to what the next natural question should be. So lots of value there. And I hope that all makes sense to you. If you don't, feel free to reach out, ask me questions. I'm happy to continue to dive into this deeper. But I wanted to cover that for you today, the idea of a master plan for your content. This is all under the umbrella of building a designed piece of content, a designed show. And that's part of my 4D content marketing strategy, which is design your show, develop your assets, build a distribution model, and create a discovery plan, which I talked about in the last episode 121. If you haven't heard it, go back, check it out. It's my largest piece of content yet that I'm going to continue to refine and add links to. It will be the #1 blog on my website with the most resources in it, because I want everything to lead to that, because it is where I think I can help the most people. So if you haven't listened, go listen to it. It's what I think I can help the most people with. If you're out there, you're a podcaster trying to figure out how to make your show grow, I would continue to listen to this season and check out that episode, because it's all about helping my creator friends out there, the bloggers, the podcasters, the YouTubers, figure out how to better design content to serve them better and serve their audience better, which will drive more audience growth over time. So hope you guys are excited to continue to listen to that. Season 3 going strong here. And I appreciate you guys. Look forward to you guys listening next week, and I will catch you next time.
You've just taken your marketing knowledge to another level with this episode of Brands on Brands on Brands. But we have plenty more ways to not just help you build a business, but build a brand. Head over to brandandbrands.com for more resources, as well as access to our blogs, videos, and exclusive coaching sessions with your host. Be sure to visit brandandbrands.com.